welcome to Speaking Describe Image Practice Set number 1. As we have just seen in the introduction, in this type of question you'll be presented with an image. So you have to try to understand what that image, which could be just a picture of something or some place, or it could be a graph, a chart, a map, a table, anything. And then based upon that image, you have to form a response which should convey precisely what the image is trying to say. Okay, so you'll get about 25 seconds in the beginning to look at the image. After the 25 seconds, the microphone will open up, and then you'll have another 30 or 40 seconds to give your response into the microphone. So that's the same method that we are going to follow here. When you see the image, the countdown will also start, and then after that countdown, say 25 seconds, another countdown will start, which would be of around 40 seconds. And in that 40 seconds, you should try to record your response, your spoken response, into your mobile phone, or if you want, you can also use a microphone on your PC, on your computer. Okay, so most computers, the PC, it has a sound recorder, you can use that. Or I found that students often find the mobile phone sound recorder very convenient. So just record it in your mobile phone and then play it back. And when we look at the answer and why we have formed that answer, we'll also play a sample response for you to compare it with. All right, let's start question number 1. Okay, so that was 25 seconds for you to understand the image. Now you have 40 seconds in which you have to give your response into the sound recorder. So do that in your mobile phone, record it somewhere, and then we'll go and have a look at what the answers are. All right, so have you been able to record your response into the recorder by now? Since this is the first question, if you need more time, please just pause the video and then try recording it again. It's important that you get a hang of how you're going to practice, how you're going to start and stop your mobile phone recorder, how you're going to record into that. Once you have done that, I will go ahead, you can come back and play the video again. Okay, let's go and have a look at the answer now. So this is what the image was, right? First, let's hear what a sample response would be. At the same time, you'll also see the response written on the screen, so that it'll be easier for you to understand and follow along. Here it is.
The picture depicts a scene from some historic period. There is a man dressed up in some traditional performer clothes, surrounded by lions and tigers in a cage. There are 5 animals in total, 2 lions, 2 tigers, and 1 other beast. It looks like the performer has been successful in holding them at bay. Behind the cage, you can see the audience watching the performance.
All right. So when you first looked at the image, what came to your mind? Right? It's a general picture. It's not a map. It's not a diagram. It's not a graph. So whenever you are starting your responses, uh, the first picture it should give an overview. The first sentence should give an overview. It should tell what the image is about. So in this case, it was that the picture depicts a scene or shows a scene from some historic period. Why historic period? Because by looking at the dress of the man, right, you can see that it looks like it's from some old time period. And then you describe the different elements of the picture. The one element of the picture is that there's a performer, there's a man who's dressed up in some traditional clothes, and he's surrounded by lions, tigers, etc. So maybe it's a scene from an old circus or something like that. And the other specific of this image is that there's a cage in which the animals and the performer are. Then you can give some more detail. You can count the number of animals there are and tell what kinds of animals they are. So the speaker, the sample response, the guy was sure about lions and tigers, but wasn't sure about the fifth animal, so he just said fifth or one other beast. So that's also fine. And whenever possible in these type of responses, you have to add your own meaning to it. You have to draw some conclusion, and you have to add your own perspective to it. And in this case, it was that it looks like the performer has been successful in holding them at bay. Holding them at bay means keeping them away, keeping them at a distance, that it looks like he has been successful in keeping himself safe among the animals. And then the last sentence was that behind the cage you can see the audience watching the performance. So that's just another point. So the structure, you'll begin with giving an overview, then you'll describe the different specific elements of the picture, and then you can add some information or a conclusion from your understanding. So the better you do it, the better your answer would be. Now, when you are giving these image responses, you have to speak naturally. And when we are speaking naturally, just the way I am doing at the moment, it's natural to hesitate a bit, to sometimes, repeat some words. So all of that is okay in this kind of question answers. So in speaking uh, and describing image, so you have to be natural even if you hesitate for a moment and you repeat a word, that's fine. Just don't get stuck at it too much because you'll only have 30 seconds or 40 seconds in which you have to give your answer. So keep moving forward. All right, let's go ahead and try another question now. Question number 2. All right, so have you been able to record your response by now? It's fine if it takes a few extra seconds because you are doing it on a mobile phone or in a sound recorder on the computer. So turning it on, turning it off, stopping the recording, etc. can take a bit of time, so that's fine. Just make sure it's not too much out of the range. So you should practice keeping your responses within 40 seconds. So the audio that you record, that shouldn't be more than 40 seconds. All right, let's go ahead and see what a sample answer would be like. Let's see and hear the answer.
The picture is that of a maze which looks quite simple. At the top left, there is a red arrow which shows the entrance into the maze. At the bottom right, there is a green arrow which shows the exit out of the maze. The task for anyone would be to draw one continuous line starting from red and ending at green without crossing any lines of the maze.
All right, so following our template, the structure that we have to follow, the very first line that should be give us an overview. So in this case, when I look at the picture, I can see that it's a puzzle, it's a maze. So I say that the picture is that of a maze. It doesn't look too difficult, which looks quite simple. And then I'll describe the specific elements. So in this, the specific elements are the red arrow and the green arrow. So I'll say at the top left there's a red arrow which shows the entrance into the maze, and at the bottom right there's a green arrow which shows the exit out of the maze. And then based upon my own understanding and uh, what I know about mazes and puzzles, I'll just add another sentence to sort of draw a conclusion that the task for anyone would be to draw one continuous line starting from red and ending at green without crossing any lines of the maze. Someone else could have drawn a different conclusion. For example, someone else could have said that the task would be to for someone to enter the maze at the green arrow and to find the way out at the green arrow at the bottom. So and that would have been fine. This is a test of your speaking and what you get out of the image. So it's perfectly fine if you draw different conclusions or if you describe it in your own ways. That's perfectly fine. Okay, now please spend some time at each of these questions comparing your audio response with what the audio response was. You can always go back in the video and play it again to see what the sample audio response was. So look for things such as in your audio response, did you cover the main point? Did you give an overview? Did you cover all the distinct points? Did you show the relationships between the points? Was your response smart enough to draw a conclusion? Did you draw a conclusion there? And then also try to understand, did you make any did you pronounce any words incorrect? Okay, how the grammar was. Did you make any mistakes there? Did you get stuck at one point or at one word for too long? So all of that shouldn't happen. All right, your response should flow very freely. Okay, ready for next question then? Okay, let's go ahead and do the question number 3 now. All right, so do we have your response now? Take more time if you need to. Pause the video. Or let's go ahead and have a look at the answer. Here we are.
The diagram contains a lot of information about the various cloud types. From the diagram, one can see the height at which a cloud type occurs, the relative size of that cloud type, and also the shape that a cloud might take. Cumulonimbus and nimbostratus clouds are formed across multiple altitudes from low to high, and they both provide rain. At the lowest height, you will find cumulus, stratus, and stratocumulus. In the middle are altocumulus and altostratus, and the highest altitude one finds cirricumulus, cirrostratus, and cirrus. Cirrus, cirrostratus, and stratus are shaped like wind. Altocumulus and cirrocumulus are very small in size.
Okay, so when you look at this image, you can tell that it's a scientific diagram or it's a climate diagram, something to do with it. And what it's showing is it's showing there are different clouds and they are at different heights. So the first thing that I want you to understand that there are you know too many different types of clouds here. So if you start speaking about each of those clouds individually. Say, let's say, first you start telling about cumulonimbus, then cumulus, then stratus, then nimbostratus, then altostratus, then altocumulus, then stratocumulus. If you try to cover each one of those in one line, you will definitely run out of 40 seconds. What's essential is that you learn how to club similar elements together. So what are the similar elements to here? First look at what are the largest or what are the biggest, and that applies to all uh, kinds of images, even in graphs, uh, bar graphs or pie charts, etc. Try to find out which are the bars of similar heights, or which are the pies in a pie chart of similar size, and then you can first focus on the biggest, then maybe you can talk about the ones which have another element together. So that would save you some time and also help you convey all the meaning. In this question, so the overview was that the diagram contains a lot of information about the various cloud types. Okay, and what can the diagram tell you? It can tell you that the heights at which different clouds occur. It can tell you a bit about the shape that they take. It can tell you which clouds are bigger, which clouds are smaller. So that's why we say that from the diagram one can see the height at which a cloud occurs, the relative shape of that cloud type, and also the shape that a cloud might take. Then we say, take the biggest ones, and we say that cumulonimbus and nimbostratus, they are formed across multiple altitudes, means multiple heights, from low to high, and they both, they are the only two which rain comes from. And then we club the three together, which are at the bottom, cumulus, stratus, stratocumulus, and then we talk about the middle and the ones at the top. So we have clubbed all of them together. Um, an additional detail which possibly could have been added to the response was a bit about the height. So you could have said that um, from the diagram one can see the height at which the cloud type occurs, which can be less than 2000 meters to up to 12,000 meters, right? So that's an additional element that could have been added. But when you have only 40 seconds, then you have to make a decision. You'll try to pick the ones which convey the maximum meaning, and that's what was done in this sample response. Now pause the video, listen to your audio response, play it out on your mobile phone or on your recorder, and then compare it to the response that we had. So feel free to go back and play it for the comparison purpose. All right. Shall we go to question number 4 then? Here we are. All right, let's go ahead and have a look at the answer. Here it is.
The graph compares the GDP per capita of India and UK from 1700 to 1950. The GDP has been adjusted for inflation. It is interesting to note that while India's GDP remained constant from 1700 to 1950 at around $500, the GDP of UK increased steadily from the time of East India Company starting in 1750 and sharply after 1850 when the British Raj was established. By 1950, UK's GDP was around 14 times that of India. At the same time, the population ratio of UK and India changed from almost 1 to 20 in 1700s to almost 1 to 7 in 1950.
Okay, so the very first thing, when you look at this image, what's the first thing that you notice? The first thing that you notice is that it's a graph. So it shows the curves for UK and India. Uh, you look at the title to see what the graph is about. So it is GDP per capita, inflation adjusted. And then when you are looking at the graphs, you look at what's at the x-axis. You look at what's at the y-axis. At the horizontal and the vertical lines, so that what exactly is the graph trying to say. So it's year versus dollars. So that's why you say the graph compares the GDP per capita of India and UK from 1700 to 1950, and that the GDP has been adjusted for inflation. Now, some students, they say something like this: the graph shows the GDP per capita for India and UK from 1700 to 1950. Now, the purpose of the graph is not just to show the GDPs of the two countries. The purpose of the graph is comparison. So that's why using that word, conveying the right sense is very important. You'll get better marks if you say things like the graph compares, okay, rather than just saying the graph shows. The next one, then you tell about India, and then you tell about the UK. So it's clear, you can notice that it's divided into three time periods. So Mughal Empire, then the East India Company, and the British Raj. So, and in the first part, the Mughal Empire, they both had steady GDPs. It's after the East India Company that the British, the UK GDP started increasing, and then as soon as the British Raj was established, it rose sharply. So just from 2,500, it increased to 7,000 by 1950. Okay, so uh, when you are looking at these graphs, it's important to look for points where there's a sudden increase, where one goes down and the other goes high, to notice the points or the time periods till which both the graphs are the same, because those are the key elements which you'll use in your answer. So it's interesting to note that while India's GDP remained constant from 1700 to 1950, and it stayed at 500, the GDP of UK increased steadily from the time of East India Company, starting in 1750, and sharply after 1850 when the British Raj was established. And by 1950, UK's GDP was around 14 times that of India. So UK became 7,000 and India was still at 500. So that's why 7,000 is 14 times of 500. So that's a better way of uh, putting it in your answer. So instead of just saying that India was 500 and UK was 7,000, you can say India remained constant at 500 while UK became almost 14 times that of India. So uh, the purpose of your speech or your answers is also to show your variety, the different ways you can use the language. So doing all of this helps with that. And then the other point was about the population ratio. So that's the last point that's mentioned in the answer. But that's a secondary point. So that's mentioned as that. At the same time, the population ratio changed from 1 is to 20 in 1700s to 1 is to 7 in 1950. So again, instead of saying 5.2 to 100 and 14 to 100, we simplified it by saying 1 is to 20 and 1 is to 7. Okay, so that was your graph question. Pause here, review your answers, then come back and play. And then we'll go to question number 5. Alright, 40 seconds are over. Have you recorded your response? Pause if you need more time. And then let's go ahead and have a look at the answer.
The pie chart shows the employment provided by various sectors in 2009 to 2010 for a particular region, maybe a state or a country. It is very clear from the chart that biggest employment provider in 2009 to 10 was agriculture, accounting for more than 50% of the share. This was followed by manufacturing and construction, each providing 11% of total jobs in the region. The next highest was trade sector at 9%. Transport and hospitality and real estate came in next, at 4% and 3% respectively. Education and government provided only 2%, and all other sectors combined accounted for the remaining 5%. It is clear that agriculture is the mainstay of this region.
Okay, so when you look at this picture, you know that it's a pie chart. Yes, so a pie chart means it's something like a pie and then divided into different areas. So that's a pie chart. What you try to the first thing that you notice, you have to try to see the title. So it's employment by sector, percentage, share, 2009, 2010. So in that year. Now it doesn't say that whether this is for a country, any particular country or any particular region. So that's why we just say that the pie chart shows the employment provided by various sectors in 2009, 2010 for a particular region, maybe a state or a country. Okay. Now, then what you do is you look at the biggest part, biggest chunk of it. Which which pies are the highest and which are the lowest. So so the agriculture that has the highest percentage, 53%. So you say that it's very clear that the biggest employment provider. Now we are, instead of always saying that the biggest share in employment sector. So we, as I said, we have to show our variety. We have to show that we can use language in different ways. That's why we use different words as well. So we say the biggest employment provider in 2009-10 was agriculture, accounting for more than 50% of the share. So instead of just saying 53%, you can say more than 50%, and that's fine. Then try to club, look at the next biggest. So manufacturing and construction, similar. And at the same time, in your first 25 seconds, you should also note down which are the smallest ones. So that in the end, you'll club them all together. So the second sentence was, this was followed by manufacturing and construction, each providing 11%. The next highest was trade sector at 9%. Transport and hospitality and retail came in next at 4% and 3%. Education and government provided only 2%. And then others in the graph says 5%. So instead of just saying others, you will say, and all other sectors combined accounted for or provided the remaining 5% jobs. Now quickly, you can try to draw a conclusion. So you can say that it is clear that agriculture is the mainstay of this region. Mainstay means that this region depends, mainly on agriculture for jobs, etc. So that's a conclusion also that you added. So remember the structure: your overview sentence, then specifics. Look at the biggest, look at the highest, try to draw conclusion in the end, and in between, if there are too many elements, then try to club them together. So the highest ones you can club them together. The smallest ones you can club them together. All right, because you have to keep your response within 40 seconds. Okay. So as I said earlier, play your audio response as well and try to compare it to this audio response. Feel free to go back, replay the video, or replay this particular question again and hear the audio response that was there. All right. Well done. So you have completed set number 1 of speaking, describe image. Now take a little break if you want to, or if you are up for it, go ahead and start practicing with practice set number 2. All the best.